Today, we want to talk about the case of the activist who is arrested for using a Duress pin on GrapheneOS. Thanks for checking out this video by Switch Linux. If you like this type of content, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more. Leave us a like and a comment down below. And of course, we will talk about GrapheneOS, which I am running on my production phone here. This one's a Pixel 7a, and picked this guy up for under $200. And Graphene is supported on it for quite a while. And it is an excellent operating system. Very good on privacy, very good on security, as we will see here. And there is a case of an activist who is being charged with a felony for wiping his phone. And this is a weird application of this law. So I'm going to walk you through this case, even telling you a couple of kind of behind the scenes and earlier events on this that I actually haven't seen the other tech channels cover in more detail. And the reason is you need to understand why the police did not like this guy. And that's the reason why you want to be careful. Because if they don't like you and they know who you are, well, guess what? They can find a way to take you down for something. So this actually goes back to Atlanta. And a couple years ago, if you follow anything in politics, you might have heard about this particular situation. It actually had the comical event. I'll tell you about the comical event in a moment. It's comical and tragic at the same time. But there were a forest near Atlanta, Georgia, and the police wanted to use this for a training area. And apparently I think it was a homeless camp or something was there, and it would mean moving the homeless camp out. And it caused a bunch of activists in the midst of like the BLM riot era to get all mad. And it actually resulted in a war between activists and police, involving in a full-on shootout where one guy who was a non-surgical transitioner going from male to female was shot right through the groin. And so that would be like, well, you wanted to transition, buddy. And that was some of the things that other people aren't mentioning. So there has been a severe amount of conflict between this particular activist group and the police in Atlanta, Georgia over this particular event. And so because of this, and of course with the activist judges and things in the area, there hasn't been a whole lot of accountability on the one end. And it was actually the activists who started the shootout with the police. And if you start a shootout with the police, I'm sorry, the police have to end it. And that is effectively what happened. But the police didn't necessarily have no bad feelings, and they continue to watch all of the people that they know are involved in this case. And that is the backstory you haven't heard in a lot of other places. But this brings us back to this individual guy who is a United States citizen, and this is Samuel Tunick, and he is on his way on his way home from abroad. So he comes back in, and Border Patrol now wants to see his phone. Was it customs agents? Excuse me, wanted to see his phone. Now, what they allege and what is actually going on behind the scenes is the FBI apparently had some behind the scenes talk about wanting to get this guy. And so they're like, well, we'll just hold him on suspicion of CP. Is there evidence of this? Well, we don't know. There's no court order about it. There's apparently no real evidence about it, but you can't go against a CP collector. So, or you can't go for the CP collector. It's the universal excuse. If you'll remember a case, we talked about it years ago in Baltimore area. There was a man that the police alleged he had the same type of content on his Mac, which was locked with an encryption key. And he would, they basically didn't have any, they said, well, we know you have it. They just didn't have enough evidence to force an unlock, but the judge wanted to force the unlock. So that man spent at least 2 to 3 years in jail on contempt of court. So he went to jail for failing to open up the device to allegedly show evidence against him. which in and of itself was egregious. But again, who's going to be for the side of the CP collector? And that would be the challenge. And that's the case going on here. So he's running GrapheneOS on his device. He comes in, the U.S. Border Patrol's like, or U.S. Customs, whatever. They're like, hey, we need to see your phone. We think you got bad stuff on there. So he's like, well, I don't. And what apparently happened is they did not a full arrest. And that is another one of the nuance here is in the articles. His defense lawyers right now are saying they didn't Mirandize him and they didn't offer to give him a lawyer. Well, unless there's a point of an arrest, they don't have a requirement to do that. You can be held for 24 hours without being arrested. You do not need to be Mirandized until an actual arrest. And your lawyer doesn't have to be present until after the Mirandizing. And that is the slippery slope they're walking on, that maybe we need a lot more clarification on the rules about any form of questioning versus an actual warranted based questioning. So there's a little bit of nuance in this case as well. So looking into this, they basically say, hey, we're going to look for anything that happens to be prohibited. Why? Well, because the FBI simply wanted to arrest this guy. They knew he was traveling abroad because of his passport. They know when he's coming back because, again, his passport, they just put a customs detainer on him. And, this country, we can detain our own citizens and question them, but we cannot detain the illegal ones. Lord help us all. All right. And so effectively, he wanted to, they basically wanted into his phone. He eventually gives them the Duress pin. So what is the Duress pin? This is GrapheneOS's website talking about their features. So the Duress pin and password, GrapheneOS provides users the ability to set a Duress pin password that will irreversibly wipe the device along with any installed eSIMs once entered anywhere where the device credentials are requested on the lock screen or along with any other prompt in the OS. The wipe does not require a reboot and cannot be interrupted. It can be set up in settings, security, privacy, device unlock, Duress password in the owner profile. Duress pin is solely used for pin entry and Duress password is solely used for password entry. Both Duress pin and password are mandatory to enable the feature to account for different profiles that may have different unlock methods. Duress pin will also wipe the device when entered as a two-factor fingerprint unlock pin, but not currently when entered as the SIM pin. So effectively, this is a pin you can give which will wipe the device. So under duress, he's not able to talk to his lawyer. For better or for worse, whether that's legal or not, needs to wrestled out in the courts or maybe. And then you also would then have the situation where he's under duress. He can't talk to his lawyer. So he gives them the duress pin, the phone wipes. Now, this is where it gets interesting. And this is where this case has never happened, is that they actually are arresting him now on suspected destroying of evidence. Now, here is the problem with that destroying of evidence. The only way it is quote unquote illegal for you to destroy your evidence is when you have been issued a notice to retain evidence. So if the police do not go to the judge and get a warrant, and that warrant now says you have to retain your evidence and we're searching for such and such, then destroying anything would actually be a crime. But this guy, there's apparently no warrant. There's apparently no lawyer. There's apparently no call for retaining any information. And he is under duress, and he is, by his own perception, being deprived of his protected constitutional rights as a United States citizen. So under those points of duress, he gives the duress pin and wipes the device. Now they want to charge him with destroying evidence. Well, what was the evidence of their evidence? They didn't have any. In fact, to the contrary, we have evidence that the authorities are trying to find a reason to hold and arrest him. That's the evidence we have. And so effectively, after all of this, so appears to be a new legal strategy. EFF experts who spoke to TechCrunch note they've never seen the law applied in this way before. DOJ will need to argue that Even though Tunick was told it was a routine border check, he ran afoul of the law by tricking an agent into deleting his data. If convicted, Tunick could face up to 5 years in prison. Tunick's lawyers have filed a motion with the court asking that all evidence from interrogation, including the use of the dress code, be suppressed due to a violation of his constitutional rights. The motion says the government's actions were merely pretexts for a fishing expedition to gather information on activists who worked against Cop City. And that is the situation here. And so I am on team activist in this case, even though I think his cause is kind of absurd. I followed this case when it was in the news. Was it a couple years ago? Spring of 2025. So a little over a year ago. I followed the case pretty much there, and I'm kind of on team cop on the overarching situation about the forest. But I'm with the activist on this one here because there's no evidence. You haven't found anything. You're simply looking for something, and you're using these weird laws as a pretext for doing this. Now, GrapheneOS was reached out about this, and so they defend the data wiping function that blocked U.S. border search, of course. So the developer of the ultra-secure Android GrapheneOS is defending the approach after the activist used the operating system's data wiping feature to erase his phone and block federal agents from searching the device. GrapheneOS is completely legal. We have no obligation to weaken any of the security protections it provides, and laws attempting to make it illegal or require weakening would be unconstitutional. So they even said here that the way the phone is put together, it's not even technically possible for Graphene to even help with it. So over here, they say the agents demanded the device password. They said they never gave him his Miranda rights. They ignored his request to speak with a lawyer. And when he provided a password, it was the Duress password that wiped it out. So the officials entered the phone. The screen went black, flashed several times, and the phone appeared to restart. So the indictment against him claims he violated U.S. law by knowingly destroying or impairing the government's authority to seize property under its lawful control. This is where the activist is correct, because unless they presented him with a warrant for the phone, there is no requirement he retains data. And guess what? He didn't enter the passcode. They did. So this might be the first case of targeting GrapheneOS. Oh boy, how wonderful. So now all of us using GrapheneOS are going to be seen as crazy people. That's okay. That's fine. Post on Saturday, Canadian nonprofit behind the operating system GrapheneOS Foundation explained the software offers a range of features to prevent data extraction. One of those is the auto reboot timer. If you don't touch your phone for a preset period of time, it just reboots itself. And they say this will reset the data at rest. So remember, the phone reboots, the data remains encrypted until the very first time the PIN number is inserted. So my phone, since it's not in that situation right now, the data is decrypted because the phone has been used. But if this phone reboots, because I haven't touched it for 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 hours, whatever I have it set at, and it reboots itself, then I would actually have to enter the PIN in order to decrypt anything on the phone at all. And that is the case going on here. So here's some of the other challenges with this case. One commentator made the very valid point. You ought to be very careful, even without a warrant, unlocking your phone and handing it to police, especially if they walk away with it. And the reason is, hey, if they're looking for a pretext to get you on something anyway, who's to say they don't walk away with it unlocked and put something on there and say, look at this horrible stuff we just found. I mean, there are body cam instances that we have found, cases where police are doing like drug raids. They couldn't find any drugs, so they literally planted drugs on the scene. There's one instance where the guy forgot he was wearing the body. Actually, I think he misstarted his body cam footage. So he thought he had turned it off. He planted the drugs, thought he turned it back on so he could discover the drugs. And it turned out that he accidentally left his body camera footage on. So the body camera footage showed him planting the drugs. And so, police are not behind this, beyond this stuff if they actually want to arrest somebody. And a lot of times they're not necessarily looking for the truth behind the crime. A lot of times they're just looking for the arrest for the crime. And that is the challenge that we have. So in a world where you have right now that is becoming harder and harder to trust law enforcement. And I don't want that to be the case. I would rather stand with the police in many cases, but you're making it very, very hard to stand with you when you want to automate all of our fines. You want to rob us blind with AI automation. You want to stop us from holding you accountable. You want to live under this, this privilege protection of, what do they call it? Qualified immunity. You want to have all of this benefit for you and leave all of us plebs defenseless against the onslaught of technology that you push against us with your flock cameras and your camera-laden trash cans and everything else that you want to do. I'll tell you, we have to come back together as a society to get to the point where we can once again trust the police, because I want to trust the police. I want the police to do a good job. But as long as you're doing things like this and going on fishing expeditions and then arresting people for putting in a duress pin when you are denying him of a lawyer and you're denying him of a warrant, I have to agree with the activist on this one. And this is a bad case for law enforcement, unfortunately. So let me know your thoughts about all this in the comments down below. And if you do you have a duress pin? If so, what is your duress pin? Let me know that in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to GrapheneOS.